Hey everybody, it's Jeff Phillips at Accounting Fly. How's it going this morning? It's okay, I'm saying morning because I am in Las Vegas at an accounting conference and it's only 9 o'clock in the morning. But Amy and Shayna, you guys are, I'm assuming, in the East Coast, so it's probably about lunchtime where you're at. Is that right?
Just about.
Okay. So we'll eat lunch after this. Um, so welcome to today's session. We had such a positive response for those of you who heard Amy and Gleim talk about the cash flow statement of cash flows back in October that we are doing another session, and we are really excited to have Gleim participate. And glad you're here as well. Um, so if this is your first time joining an Accounting Fly webinar, what in the world is Accounting Fly? We are your one-stop shop for all things related to your career in the profession of accounting. So you'll get webinars. Our blog has tons of content. We have awesome partners like Gleim, CPA Review, who give you discounts just for being around Accounting Fly. It's our goal that you have an incredible accounting career no matter what you do with your degree. And we're really glad you're here. So today's session is going to be DRS on the 2016 CPA exam. So what is this? This is going to be Amy Ford, who I'll introduce in a minute properly, is going to give you a step-by-step on how to approach this DRS, which is a profound new change that's going to come into effect in July on the CPA exam. Nobody knows this better than Amy and Gleim, so you're in for a really great treat. And it's going to actually make this topic super interesting, which only Amy can, I believe.
Definitely.
Give us a shout. Let's see, if you are out there, you've got a control panel on your GoToWebinar control panel. Would you do me a favor and type in that you can hear us okay, that the sound is coming clear? Just say hi. Thank Amy and Shayna for being here. Just give us a quick say hello on your control panel. Yep, thanks a lot. Yep, you can hear us. Okay, that always helps. Thanks, guys, and hey back to all of you. Cool. I love all these comments. Okay, so Amy, I'm gonna bring you in. How you doing this morning?
Good.
Awesome. So before I introduce Amy, you've got Amy over here next to me. You also got Shayna St. Jean, who's in Florida with Gleim. Shayna, you're going to be back as Amy wraps up to talk about some of the opportunities they have with Gleim, right?
That's correct. Yep.
All right, cool. Well, before you and I drop off, I want to introduce Amy. We're really thrilled, Amy, to have you here. Amy's been an Accounting Fly presenter before, as many of you know. Amy, your bio is so impressive, I have to actually write it down because I can't remember all of it. Okay, she's a CPA, she's a CMA, you're an instructor of accountancy at Western Illinois University. We're the faculty advisor of the Western Illinois chapter of the Institute of Management Accountants, IMA. IMA named Amy the Faculty Mentor of the Year in 2011. How cool is that? And the same year, you passed the CMA with one of the top scores in the world on the exam. So you know how to take tests and teach how to take tests, obviously. Amy's a lead professor in the Gleim Instruct video series. And Amy's worked in public accounting, is now a professor. I mean, you've just seen the whole gamut of this career, and is just simply an outstanding teacher. Amy's exam teaching experience is included with all the Gleim premier review systems, which Shane is going to talk about, and she's just a fabulous teacher. So I look forward to you walking us through DRS, the specific steps of what to expect, Amy, and I'm going to get out of the way and let you do your thing. So I'll be back. Oh, last thing. We are going to leave ample time for Q&A. So please pay attention. Now that you know how to use the question panel, fire off the questions if you have a question about Gleim and their products. If you have a question about DRS, if you have a question about any changes on the CPA exam, let us have them. I'll play the role of moderator, ask Amy or Shana the questions after we wrap up in a few minutes. So Amy, good morning, welcome, and thanks for being here.
All right, thanks, Jeff. Welcome, everyone. You've probably heard a lot about changes regarding the CPA exam recently, and I hope today we can prepare you for the 2016 changes. Now, don't confuse the 2016 changes with the 2017 changes. I know, that sounds kind of confusing, right? Well, in 2017, there will be some major changes to the exam, and Gleim's already covered those in previous webinars. But today, in this Accounting Fly webinar, Gleim's preparing you for the changes that are coming up in 2016. Some of the minor changes for 2016 took effect January 1st. We'll talk about those briefly, but honestly, they're not going to be anything to get too worried about. The main focus today in our webinar is going to be the document review simulation, or the DRS. All right, let's get started with some of the minor changes that were effective January 1st of 2016. There's new exam software, which has changed the appearance of some of the screens in the exam. The screens will for the most part, look a lot like they did in 2015. So there's nothing major here. In the Gleim CPA review system, the exam emulation is one of my favorite features. So if you aren't using Gleim, you should definitely check it out. They're in the process of updating their interface to reflect these new screen appearances in the 2016 exam. Another minor change is the modified toolbar, which is shown here on the slide. Within the testlets, the top toolbar looks a little bit different than it did before. The timer will be more visible, and candidates who don't finish early will see that their countdown includes seconds when you get to the less than 2 minutes remaining mark. So the timer will say when you have 2 minutes or less, you start getting the countdown in seconds. Probably the most significant change to me is the button that you finish the testlet with. That button used to say exit, and now the button's going to be labeled submit testlet. I think the AICPA here is hoping that the label is going to make more sense to the candidate to identify when you're clicking that button, you are submitting the testlet. That makes more sense. Now, the last thing I wanted to tell you about these minor changes January 1st, they say they have a more modern design. That just means that the exam screens have been refreshed with a new design that's supposed to better present the content and the information. So like I said, these are all relatively minor and really nothing to get too worried about. All right, now let's talk about our main topic today. The AICPA announced a new test item called the Document Review Simulation, or the DRS for short. Now, they talked about this when they announced the 2017 exam changes. But in December of 2015, last month, we learned that these could start appearing in audit, FAR, and reg as early as the third quarter of 2016. That's July 1st. Okay, let's talk about this DRS. I think a good place to start is, what does it mean? What is a DRS? Well, this is a new type of item, and it's derived from those task-based simulations that you should already be familiar with when you're looking at the CPA exam. This is just a new type of simulation where you'll be given a realistic document and then the source materials that go along with it. Within the document, there'll be highlighted words or phrases, sentences, or even a paragraph that may or may not be correct. And it's going to be up to you to determine any edits that are necessary, if any edits are necessary at all. That's confusing, so we'll go through that step by step here in a little bit. Now, why did this change happen? Well, this new addition, it's coming from the AICPA's desire to increase the exam authenticity. The AICPA feels that the document review simulations, these represent tasks that most, if not all, newly licensed CPAs are expected to perform. Now, at first glance, this may seem tough, but let's think about it. As a new CPA or as a CPA exam candidate, you should be prepared to create a document like you're going to see here in the DRS. So if you can create a document, shouldn't you be able to review it and edit it? Exactly. Yes, you can do it. Now, the AICPA's website contains a tutorial and sample test. Today, we're going to go through a document review simulation together from FAR. That's one of those found in the sample test. All right, so what we're looking at here, this is the sample test, and in this testlet, question 5 is a DRS. Investor Relations for Graystack Corporation has prepared a press release to report second quarter earnings for year 9. Your directions are to review the draft press release and make any changes necessary to ensure it is accurate and consistent with the excerpts from the quarterly financial statements and the related notes provided in the Financial Statements tab. So the options that we have, this is right out of the testlet, the options that we have in the top left corner are document review, authoritative literature, financial statements, and help. The document review tab will return you to the actual document if you've moved on to one of the other tabs. The authoritative literature tab links you to the FASB codification table of contents, where you could do research if necessary. The financial statements tab links you to the related financial data. If you select this tab, it takes you to 5 pages of source materials for this particular DRS. The 5 pages are from Graystack's financial statements. Those pages include a statement of operations, a balance sheet, a statement of cash flow, and then there's 2 pages from their footnotes. The last tab is help. Let's take a closer look at this help tab, as I think it's really important to understanding how you actually go about answering these types of DRSs. All right, so this is what the help screen looks like on our DRS question. Each portion of text to be edited is shown in blue with a dotted underline. Now, this example has nothing to do with our Graystack document in our question, but I think it's a really good picture of what you're being asked to do and what you're being asked to select when you're making these DRS edits. Okay, so the text here in this DRS for this basic example is, it says level 2, inputs include quoted prices for dissimilar instruments and unobservable inputs. To receive full credit, you must click on every underlined portion of text in the DRS. I think this is a really important item to take away from today's webinar. I just said you must click on every underlined portion of text. Even if the underlined portion is correct and does not need any edits, you have to click on it to submit your answer. Here's why. When you click on the text, your list of options appears. The first option is to leave the text as originally stated. So if the document's correct, you still have to select the underlined portion and then choose the option of original text. Now, if the text shouldn't be included in the document at all, you select the choice that says delete text. Then the next 4 options in this example are rephrasing or revising the underlined text. When you select an option, a check mark icon will appear that follows the editable text to indicate that it's been answered. So a check mark means I've answered it. Okay. Then the last thing you would do is you click accept. There's a button that's going to say accept, and that keeps your changes. Okay. So let's go through this Graystack press release step by step together so that you know how to approach the DRS. Okay, this paragraph has our first 2 highlighted items. Notice how the icon to the right of each underlined portion, it's like a blue, kind of looks like a dialog box, a little blue dialog box off there to the side. What that means is you've not yet answered the item. We have to do these one at a time, so let's start with the first underlined item. It says net revenue for the second quarter of year 9 decreased $1,331, or 8.5%, to $18,254. In order to know whether this is correct or not, we need to look at the actual financial statements. So we would go up to that top corner and we would select the Financial Statements tab. This is the first page of the Financial Statements tab. This is the Statement of Operations. Let's take a look at how Graystack has organized their columns. The first two columns on the left are the 3 months ended June 30th. In other words, just the second quarter results for each year. That's year 9 and year 8. The second two columns, or the columns on the right, are the 6 months ended June 30th. In other words, the year-to-date columns. Now, the reason I'm going over this with you is when I first looked at the problem, I was looking at the columns incorrectly, and then I just got really confused. Now, that seems like a simple mistake, but that's not a mistake you want to make when you're taking the CPA exam. So take just a quick second, make sure that you understand the material that you're looking at so that you don't make an easy type of error when you're taking the exam. Okay, so now that we've made sure we know what the columns are, let's talk about our item in the press release. Okay, our item in the press release was talking about the second quarter, which means we need to look at the first two columns on the left. Year 9's net revenues are $18,254, and Year 8's net revenues are $16,923. That is an increase of $1,331. For the percentage increase, we take 1,331 divided by the base year, that's Year 8, 16,923. That's 7.9%. Now that we know the correct figures, let's see how we would answer the question in the document screen. In the Document Review tab, after you click on or select the first underlined item, this is the screen that appears. Our answer choices are to use the original text, delete the item, or make one of 5 revision choices. Okay? So what we have to ask ourselves, is the original item as written in the press release correct? No. The original item says net revenues for the second quarter of year 9 decrease $1,331 or 8.5% to $18,254. When we looked at the financial statement, we saw that net revenues increased $1,331. So we know we need to edit this response. When we look at our choices then of the edited responses, there are 5 revision options. The correct option is the fourth one. Net revenues for the second quarter of year 9 increase $1,331 or 7.9% to $18,254. After selecting that option, we would click the Accept button. That's it. We're finished with the first question in this document review simulation. That wasn't so bad, was it? All right, let's continue on and look at the other 4 selected items in the press release. Okay, now we go back to the Document Review tab or the screen. Notice how in this paragraph, the first item, the one that we just answered, shows a check mark icon at the end of the underlined text. That's how we know that the item's been answered. So now let's look at our next underlined item, and we know we haven't answered it yet because it still shows the blue dialog box. Okay, so this is found later in the paragraph. It says the increase in net revenues for year-to-date year 9 compared to the same period in year 8 was due to higher sales in the home theater category, with the increase being partially offset by lower sales in the company's audio and themed categories. Well, basically, what's the press release trying to do here? They're trying to explain the increase in net revenues. We need to verify if that's indeed the real reason for the increase. So where would we look? We would look at the source documents. So we would click on the Financial Statements tab. In the financial statements, the footnotes are where we can learn more about the company. In this case, we need to read footnote 5, Accounts Receivable. It says, at the beginning of year 9, the company discontinued its volume rebate program. During year 9, the company launched a program that offers extended payment terms to long-term customers with high credit ratings and a history of timely payments. The program has resulted in an increase in sales over the prior year. So, was the item in the original press release correct? No. This is the explanation for the increase in net revenues. So now we go back to the Document Review tab to answer this item. Okay, once you go back to the Document Review tab and then you select this item, this second item, this is the screen that appears. Our answer choices are to use the original wording, delete the entire phrase, or choose one of the 3 options shown here of how to change or edit the item. When you read through the revision choices, you see that the first choice describes what we just read in the financial statements. So the first edit choice is our answer. The increase in net revenues for year-to-date year 9 compared to the same period in year 8 was due to higher than normal sales volume rebates offered during year 8. Now, is that wording the same word-for-word sentence that we saw in the footnotes? No. But this is where the DRS is testing your knowledge and the knowledge that's expected of a new CPA. You should be able to read the financial statements and the footnotes and then understand the meaning and present it in a press release such as this. Okay, now let's go back to the press release, and this is our third underlined item. It says, operating income for year 9 to date was $3,741, a decrease of $1,045, or 27.9%, from operating income of $4,786 for the same period of year 8. We need to go back to the financial statements and look at the operating income line item to determine if this statement is correct or if we need to edit this sentence. Okay, so we click on the Financial Statements tab, and now we're back to looking at the Statement of Operations. And this time we're looking at the operating income line item. Again, make sure you know which columns to look at when you're trying to determine if that sentence in the press release is correct. The first 2 columns on the left are the 3 months ended June 30th. The 2 columns on the right are the 6 months ended June 30th. Our statement in the press release said year to date. So which 2 columns does that mean? All right, I think you got it right. You got it right, right? You need to use the 2 columns on the right for year to date. So again, I said that can be kind of confusing, so pay attention to the columns. Okay, so we're looking at the 2 columns on the right. Year 9's operating income to date is $3,741, and year 8 was $4,786. That's a decrease from year 8 to year 9 of $1,045. So far, the statement in the press release was correct. It said a decrease of $1,045. But don't forget to keep reading and review the entire underlined portion in the press release. It said that that decrease was 27.9%. Let's double check that figure as well. We take the decrease of $1,045 and divide it by the year 8 operating income of $4,786. That's 21.8%, not the 27.9% listed in the press release. So we're going to need to make an edit to that sentence. Okay, so you would go back to the document review, okay? Then when you go to the press release, you would select that item, and then this is the answer screen that would appear. We can choose to use the original text or delete the text, or we could choose one of 3 edits to the original data. We just determined that the original data was incorrect, so we need to look at the 3 edit choices to find one that is correct. The correct answer is the first option. Operating income for year 9 to date was $3,741, a decrease of $1,045, or 21.8% from operating income of $4,786 for the same period of year 8. I hope by now you're kind of getting the hang of this DRS and how to approach the question. And I hope that after going through this entire thing together, I hope you're realizing that they're not so scary after all. You can do this. Okay, so next up in our press release is a paragraph that discusses the company's selling, general, and administrative expenses. The last sentence is underlined. The increase in the selling, general, and administrative expenses was due to ongoing litigation with a former employee, resulting in an increase of $600 in legal fees during year 9. Okay, back to the financial statements to find out if this is correct. Okay, so now in this footnote to the financial statements, we can see that legal costs were $800 and $200 in years 9 and 8 respectively. That's an increase of $600. And the reasoning that was listed in the original statement in the press release is correct based on the information that we found here in the footnotes. Now, this is an area where I anticipate a lot of CPA exam candidates are going to make a mistake. But you're watching this webinar, and you're not going to be one of those candidates who makes a mistake. The underlined item in the press release was correct, but we still have to select the text and make an answer selection. So let's walk through that. Okay, so when you went to the Document Review tab and you selected the underlined statement, this is the answer screen that appears. We just determined that the original press release is correct. So we're going to make that first answer choice, that first button that says Original Text. Once we accept the answer, we'll see the check mark icon, which means we've answered the item. Okay, now we are to the last paragraph of the press release, which contains our last underlined item to review. I think this is the trickiest item though. This paragraph goes through the net income results and then discusses the basic net income per share and diluted net income per share. Now that's just another way to refer to the basic earnings per share and diluted earnings per share. Okay, the paragraph gives the company's basic earnings per share and then also the diluted earnings per share. The basic earnings per share for year 9 to date was 8 cents. And the diluted earnings per share for year 9 to date was 7 cents. Those are not in underlined phrases in this press release, so we don't need to verify or check those figures, okay? The underlined item says, if the warrants outstanding were exercised in full, diluted net income per share for year 9 to date would decrease to 6 cents per share. This is a little bit confusing. So let's take a step back and make sure that we understand basic earnings per share and diluted earnings per share. Okay. Basic earnings per share is calculated by taking the net income available to common shareholders and dividing it by the weighted average number of common shares. Diluted earnings per share demonstrates how much the basic earnings per share would decrease from the assumption that certain events occurred, or what would happen to earnings per share if these dilutive items happened. So dilutive items include things such as whether convertible securities, preferred stock, or debt were converted. Another dilutive item is whether options or warrants were exercised. So these warrants outstanding are a potentially dilutive item for the company. That explains why the company has an 8-cent basic earnings per share and then a 7-cent diluted earnings per share for year-to-date year 9. But doesn't that 7-cent diluted earnings per share also already take into consideration the effect on the earnings per share of those warrants? Yes. So this item included in the press release doesn't make any sense, and it's not even needed. So when you select this item found at the end of the press release, this is the answer screen. We decided that this item is not correct and it's not needed, so we're going to select the delete option for our answer. Now, as one final step to the document review, I would make sure I would go back before I finish the testlet, okay? I would go to the document, in the document review, and I would make sure that all of the underlined items have that blue check mark icon, which tells me that I have answered all of the indicated items in the document. All right, I hope you've enjoyed learning about these changes to the 2016 CPA exam. Remember, the changes that were effective January 1st, 2016, this month, those were minor changes. Those were things like formatting on the exam screens and the modified toolbar. The big change for 2016 is the DRS, Document Review Simulation, which could begin appearing in audit, FAR, and reg as early as July 1st, 2016. But now that we've covered the specifics on how the DRS is formatted and how you need to go about submitting your answers, I know that you are now prepared for this new item. And don't forget, there are big changes coming to the CPA exam in 2017. Gleim has you covered though, and thoroughly explains these 2017 changes on their website, as shown here on the slide. All right, so now to tell you more about Gleim, I'm going to let Shayna take control here to tell you more. Are you there, Shayna?
Here I am. Thank you so much, Amy. That was really informative, and you always do a great job, and we're really appreciative of that. I hope you guys have taken some time to submit some questions to Jeff, because Amy and I are looking forward to answering those questions and making sure you guys are best positioned for success in the coming windows, as well as for the changes that are occurring next year. One of the big things that I wanted to discuss was the Gleim CPA review difference from a lot of other review providers. One of the things that I really like about Gleim is that it really encourages candidates to go into the exam confident and ready. One of the things that Amy mentioned was that Gleim really emulates the exam atmosphere, the exam feel, as well as in a lot of cases the difficulty of the questions that you'll get on the exam. That is also, like I said, one of my favorite features. I've gotten so many candidates that have taken the exam and they'll come back and kind of give us feedback, and one of the things that they're really appreciative is that they go into the exam and they feel as if they were still in their study mode. The screens look the same, the questions are formatted the same, everything is pretty much the same. And that is exactly what we're expecting to do in this next upcoming time. Again, my name is Shayna, for any of those that didn't catch it. I'm one of the personal counselors here. And if I'm any of your personal counselors, I wanted to quickly say hello. And if you haven't given me an update yet, go ahead and send me an email or give me a call. One of the first things that I wanted to cover is Gleim will be extending an offer through Accounting Fly. You'll get a $200 off the premium review system. Now that is a really big deal. The premium system has access until you pass. So for those of you that are studying for the exam and you're sort of needing that additional legroom or time that to prepare for the exam, Gleim will extend your access with the premium review system. On your screen now you see sort of the Gleim difference, some notes there. One of the biggest things that Gleim is known for is for our mega test bank. That includes a database of multiple choice questions in our test prep and then some simulations. Now, as Amy mentioned, there are some changes that are happening to the exam this year, and the Gleim review materials will reflect that as well. So you guys can expect for us to be up to date and reflecting the correct information and still kind of trending on what we've been doing for the last 40 years is preparing you for the exam as much as we can, which is normally exceeding as much as you need. Gleim has the largest exam emulating questions, the simulation bank, as well as our Gleim Instruct videos. Amy Ford is one of our featured professors for the Gleim Instruct videos, and there are a ton of other professors that have been great in this process of making sure that you guys are well prepared for the exam. I mentioned the Access until you pass, which is a really big deal. I've talked to a lot of candidates even today about that. Candidates that, things come up in life or they're trying to figure out exactly when they're going to be sitting for that exam. The Access until you pass is a really big deal in making sure that you have that time and access to get the exam done in the time that you want. Now, I know that we're going to have some time to answer some questions for you guys, but I wanted to, again, encourage you guys, when you do receive that Accounting Fly email with that $200 off the premium review system, take advantage of it. Don't miss out. The exam is changing. The DRS is only the beginning of the changes, especially those that are coming for 2017, and we would take a lot of pride and pleasure in making sure that you guys are successful in the CPA exam this year. Now, Jeff, did you want to come back on and discuss some of the questions that we have here?
Hey, Shana. Yeah, I sure do. I will leave the webcam off and just feed you guys questions. But Shana, one question I had was you sort of touched on the demo, and I think you gave me even a link I can send out that is a demo. Yeah. Can you talk about what the demo is? And I know that's something people really get excited about.
Yeah, and I'm really excited about the demo as well. One of the really cool things with the Gleim CPA demo is it's essentially our first study unit, so it's not exactly some random demonstration of what your studies would look like. You are actually working through the first study unit of any section that you choose. So for some of you that are going to try to knock out regulation or financial or auditing, whatever section you're going to start with, you're actually going to be working through that first study unit. So we do have a Gleim demo page, and I would encourage all of you to go ahead and get started if you don't already have the system.
Awesome. And Shana, I just sent out a link to that demo page as well to the entire audience. All right, cool.
Awesome.
So a couple of questions that we have, and let's see here. There's a handful. Okay, since we're sticking with Shana, I'm going to ask you a product-related question. Is the premium package all 4 sections, or is it section-by-section purchase?
Now, with that offer that we're extending through Accounting Fly, it is $200 off of the entire set of the system. Now, the benefit of doing it in the 4 sections rather than the individual ones is that the premium system as a set is already discounted. Compared to you purchasing 1 section at a time, it'll come out to being more than that. So using that $200 offer off of the premium is sort of like a double discount. So to answer that question, yes, there is an individual package for premium for each section, but it just makes a lot more sense as far as being cost effective to get the 4 sections.
Fantastic. All right, mixing it up. Amy, Sean wants to know, on the financial statement tab, does the DRS take you to the specific area, or do you have to go through several pages to find the source information?
That's a great question, because I kind of shortcutted it for you, made it easy in the presentation. It will just take you to the financial statements, so all 5 pages. So that first time I went to the financial statement tab, I made sure and said, okay, what have they given me, here? And the statement of cash flows was provided, and we didn't even use it for that document. So you'll have to know where you want to go in the financial statement in the actual exam.
Awesome, thank you. And this is probably a question for Shana, but Nikki wants to know how many questions are in your test bank. And I'll even take it a step further. Shana, talk about the test bank and why it's such a strong product for Gleim.
Yeah. Okay, so there are, for each section, there are over, I'm going to say about almost 2,000 questions per section. Now, the interesting thing as far as the personal counselor standpoint, as we're working with candidates, a lot of candidates, they really love that feature, and most candidates aren't even going to get through all of the questions before sitting for the exam, which I think is one of my top features for the Gleim review system. The test prep is a database of questions where you are given the opportunity to create quizzes. Now, throughout your studies, and you'll see this more when you get a chance to do the demo, or most of you know of it if you're already working with the Gleim CPA Premium system, you're creating 20 question quizzes as you're working through each study unit. And it's a really cool feature because it gives you the opportunity to kind of have a set amount of work that you're doing per topic, and it just makes it a lot easier, and I can talk about this for a lot longer, but it makes it a lot easier to figure out where your weak areas are because you're giving the same amount of time of work and same amount of questions per section. So the test prep gives you a lot of leeway as far as structuring your studies exactly as you want it. Although Gleim already prepares you for that, it gives you the opportunity to use those extra questions, because there are 2,000 questions, like I said, just about, to use those throughout your studies for cumulative reviews throughout, just to make sure you're staying fresh on the topics, as well as your final review. Another really cool thing about the test prep is that we have the study session feature versus the practice exam feature. For a majority of candidates, they're using our practice exam feature, which is going to really emulate the testing environment as far as the amount of time that you want to allot to each question, as far as, you know, just working through the questions, and it's randomized in a really cool way. The study sessions will give you feedback after each individual question. For me, working with candidates, we would get more into the study sessions if there's a time where you need to go back and review the topics. So there are a lot of really cool things for the test prep. I can talk about the customization options that are really cool, and they can kind of make a really big difference in your studies from start to finish. But the test prep it's sort of it's a really cool feature of the Gleim review system that definitely sets Gleim apart.
It really does. And by the way, the counselors really set Gleim apart. I mean, you guys take a personal interest in your students and walk them through the process to make sure they pass. And Shane, I know that's your job, and you're not going to brag on yourself, but you guys do such a good job with that. So that needs to be said.
Thank you, Jeff.
Okay, CPA exam question, Amy. Do we know if it's going to be standard that there will be one DRS simulation on the exam, like how we can expect one research simulation on the exam? And I'm going to, go ahead and answer that if you can.
Yeah, I don't know. And even at this point, they're saying it may be tested in the third quarter. You could take FAR in the third quarter and not receive a DRS. So it's just a may be tested.
Okay, so Jorge writes in, and I don't know if he gave an abbreviation of something, so we may not know what he's talking about. But Amy, maybe you do. But he said during your presentation, he goes, "I think I'm going blind. Aren't C and D the same?" I can't figure out what he's asking, but maybe I'm putting you on the spot, and you know.
He probably was looking at some of the choices. So when he was doing some of those questions, he thought two of them were the same. Some of those edit choices look almost the same. There'll be one word or one number difference, increase or decrease, or the percentage change would be different in the two. So you have to be very detail-oriented, pay attention to details. But I don't know which one he's talking about specifically, but that was probably it.
I think you're probably right. Will DRS be scored in 2016, Amy?
It could be. I'm not sure. And Sheena, you've read some of this too. You don't know. It might be. I think what they're talking about here is there's some things that show up on the test that aren't part of your grade because they're testing the question. We don't know if they'll do that in 2016 or will it be part of your grade. So here's what I always tell people: it may be tested, and you prepare like it's going to be on your test, and you prepare like it is part of your grade. That's the best recommendation at this point.
Agreed.
Absolutely. Let's see here. How long is the demo available, or how long, once you register, how long is the demo valid, Shayna?
Well, like I said, it's essentially you doing your first study unit, and so it is going to be there until you start studying for your course. And so the demo's yours as long as you have access to it. As long as you're logging in, it's yours.
Another question, Shayna, and overview of Gleim really is does Gleim, is it all self-study? Are there actual classes that people can attend? And maybe just talk about how Gleim's set up and how you deliver your content.
Yeah, so the Gleim CPA review is a self-study course. that's predominantly online. Now, there are some live reviews that would use the Gleim review system in their courses. Now, my take on that, I think I'm all for classes and live reviews, but the Gleim study tools are set up to where you're able to prepare for the exam all by yourself. The bulk of it is making sure that you give yourself time to study, because it is a self-study course. Some people need additional accountability, and that's why they'll do the live reviews. But with the Gleim review system, just having the personal counselors as well as the study planner, it makes a big difference as far as you being able to keep track of your studies and kind of going along with it that way. And I know that I just mentioned the study plan feature, and that's a feature that we had recently added to the Gleim system about 2 or 3 years ago. And since I've been working here, I've seen a huge difference in time manageability for candidates as far as when we started adding the study planner. The study planner is a part of the Gleim system where you're able to put in the approximate amount of time that you're working on your studies per week, and it's kind of set up to where it already knows how much time you should allot to each study unit. And so that study planner is going to give you the really cool benefit of giving you due dates throughout a month or 2 months, depending on how much time you're putting that you want to take to prepare for the exam. And I've seen candidates make huge leaps as far as staying on top of their studies and getting to the exam and feeling really comfortable because they've been allowed that extra week for final review, and they've been completing their studies by those due dates. So Gleim is a self-study course, and it's set up to where you're able to keep track of your studies, and you don't really need to do anything except show up in front of your computer and spend a little bit of time at it, and you'll be well prepared to pass the exam.
So we've covered a ton of ground on DRS, and the content has been fantastic. Oh, you know what? I got to read a comment. I'm sorry, this just came in from Sean. He just says, I want to give a comment. I use Gleim, and I love it. Shayna is wonderful, and the system works very well for self-study type students. So
awesome.
Yeah, and we hear that all the time, especially just getting the connection with you guys. Shayna, just to recap, what are the very next steps that if you're on the call and you're interested in getting more interaction with Amy as a teacher, getting more interaction with Gleim, like, just, I know you've said it, but like, what is the 1 or 2 things everybody can do right now to be a part of and take advantage of what Gleim has to offer?
So the biggest thing for me is I like to be a very cost-effective person. So the first thing I would say is to go ahead and take advantage of that $200 offer. It is a big deal for a system that you have access until you pass to. For those of you that are like, oh, well, I don't know, I maybe start after July and kind of see what I hear about the exam. After July, the price will be its normal premium price. So it just makes sense for you guys to just go ahead and get started with the system. With the access until you pass, you don't have to necessarily worry about not being ready to study for another 6 months. So my first thing would be go ahead and get the system, and the biggest connection to that first step is to just go ahead and make sure that you're trying out the Gleim demos and reaching out to personal counselors. The cool thing is you don't have to have the system starting out to give us a call and ask questions. Personal counselors are available with the system, but we definitely want to hear your questions and answer those questions to make sure as you guys are going into your studies that you're well prepared for that. So that would be my first thing, Jeff, is to go ahead and take advantage of the premium system, take a look around, get acquainted with it. My second thing is I think it was really cool that Amy went through an example that's from the sample test on the AICPA website. One of the cool things about working with a lot of candidates, or a lot of them come into talking with personal counselors really knowledgeable about the exam, and so you're kind of aware of where your potential blind spots might be, and that is the most opportune time to take advantage of personal counselors. So I would encourage you guys to go ahead and take a second to go through that sample test in the AICPA website to work through the Gleim demos, and that way you kind of known exactly what it's going to feel like for you to work through those study units, and you'll have as many questions as possible. I personally ask a lot of questions, and so I want to encourage you guys to do the same, because I think that makes a really big difference in your studies. I had a conversation this morning, for example, with a candidate that was starting out with his auditing section, and a lot of his questions were kind of geared towards how do I not memorize this stuff, and how do I really work through the study units. And I think by the end of the phone call, he was really comfortable because he had taken those steps. He had worked through the AI CPA sample test, the new one, even though the changes aren't happening now. He's worked through some of the study units, and those kind of bring the conversations and the interactions with Gleim to life, and it makes your studies a lot more realistic. So those are my two things. Just go ahead and get started with the system, one, and two, just be knowledgeable about the exam. You don't want to be feel like when you start your studies that you're blindsided and you're not aware of all of these things. Look out for more webinars by Accounting Fly. Look out for webinars by Gleim. Go on the website, sign up for the blog. Just take the necessary steps to cover all your in, the front, the back, the sides, your blind spots, all of that, and we're more than happy to make sure that you're feeling comfortable moving forward.
Okay, last follow-up question to that, Shayna, is you said that if somebody does the demo, they would have access to the Gleim counselors. Is that right?
Yeah, so what happens is, because you've gone through a study unit, typically you're in the Gleim online course. Now, the personal counselor is a feature that comes with the Gleim review system, but in the demo, because you're actually trying out the demo, if you have any questions on what it's going to look like moving forward to do the actual study units, you are more than welcome to call in and speak with a personal counselor. Yeah, we're more than happy to answer any questions starting out, especially in the demo when you're kind of testing out the waters and seeing what it's going to look like.
Well, I think that's something that really sets you guys apart. A couple of things I will ask. If you're in the audience and you have any, if you learned something valuable today, we'd really appreciate if you in your comments just send off what you thought of today's session. You're welcome to email me, Jeff@accountingfly.com. I can forward any pertinent questions to the team from Gleim. But we always love to know what you think about these presentations and what you got out of it, what was helpful. So, Amy, you have the last word here, and then we'll break up. But any final thoughts as we wrap up a conversation around DRS and the big changes that are coming in July?
It's coming. You can't avoid it. And I really think that this emulates what's going to be expected of a new CPA. Preparing a press release like we saw here, or reviewing a press release that someone prepared. Document review simulations really do emulate what you're going to be doing in the workforce. So it's not only preparing you for the exam, it's preparing you for success in that entry-level position. So it could show up effective as early as July 1st, so start preparing. We know even if it doesn't show up on an exam, your particular section in the end of 2016, as you look into 2017, there are more changes coming, including the document review simulation. And I would make sure, Jeff, if you want to pull that URL up again, Gleim has you covered. They have a great scores for the 2017 changes that are coming up as well.
You got it. Yep.
If I can.
No, please go ahead. Please go ahead, Shanna.
I was going to say, I like that Amy said Gleim as you covered. One of the questions that I hadn't heard anybody ask yet, but I'm sure many of you will be wondering is, when is Gleim going to make those changes, or when are we going to start preparing you for those document reviews that'll show up on the exam? The good thing is that Gleim is not a last-minute system, so we'll be well prepared before those changes occur in July. So you'll be able to, reference a lot of those changes in the Gleim review system and get a lot of practice in before those changes occur. One of the things that I've experienced with candidates asking about those changes that are happening this year and next year is one of the things that I feel when on the phone calls is a lot of panic, or like, oh man, I've got to get the exam done. Now, I would encourage you to, if you have the time now, go ahead and get the exam done. But I would also say, as far as the panic and the fear of like, oh man, they're changing the exam, what do I do? Am I going to be ready? Is it going to be difficult where I have to take the exam multiple times? Just feel really comfortable and confident that we're going to do what's necessary on our end to make sure that you guys are comfortable and confident going into the exam. So I would like to just really point that out, that we'll be prepared for those changes before the exam comes out, and those changes are there. So look out for that, and we're all for you guys and working hard on this end.
Great session, you guys. Love always connecting with you. Really appreciate the audience. We've had so much positive feedback as usual. I love reading these. I'll even email these out. Everyone, enjoy the rest of your day. It's Thursday. Have a great weekend. Amy, it's great to see you. Shayna, great to see you too. All in the webinar now, and we'll be in touch and see you down the road.
Sweet. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks,
Bye-bye.
bye.